Welcome to Lost in Thailand. Sit back, relax, and let this story pull you under. Today's tale is called From Ring to Ruin. I bought the dream, she sold the lie. It's about love, illusion, and the price of ignoring red flags. Ready? Let's begin. I never imagined a dating app would lead me here. I wasn't the kind of guy who trusted swipes and bios, but after years of disappointment back home, I figured, what do I have to lose? I'd always been drawn to Southeast Asia. The culture, the warmth, the softness in people's eyes. Western dating felt like a battlefield. I wasn't looking for someone to compete with. I was looking for peace, maybe even love. For months, I kept returning to the same profile. Her name was Anan. Her photos were understated, natural. Her status updates changed often, sometimes joyful, sometimes bitter. She talked about how hard it was to trust men, how tired she was of being let down. It felt strangely honest, like there was something behind her smile that hadn't been broken yet. I didn't message her right away. I just watched, waited. A few weeks before my vacation, I reached out. Just a simple message. She replied 2 days later. Said she'd love to meet me when I arrived in Bangkok. That was the start of our daily chats. We talked about food, weather, life. I told her I'd be in Thailand for a week, Bangkok, then Phuket, to dive. She said she wasn't a big fan of Phuket, but suggested joining me anyway. I was surprised, flattered, curious. I didn't want to seem too eager, so I booked a 2-bedroom suite. She said it was fine. When I brought up our age gap, me nearly 50, her just 30, she laughed and said she preferred older men. Said they knew how to treat a woman right. I changed my business schedule so I could stay longer in Thailand. We planned our trip together, messaging late into the night. Something in me started to believe. She told me she worked in online advertising. The details were vague, but I didn't press. She wasn't secretive, just elusive. I figured maybe it was complicated. Maybe she just didn't think I'd understand. We talked about her family. She mentioned her sister and brothers, her parents who ran a store a few hours from Bangkok. She asked me about mine, and I told her about my divorce, about the quiet apartment I'd left behind. We finally met the day after I landed. She was 3 hours late, but when she arrived, it didn't matter. She was more beautiful than her pictures, half Thai, half Chinese, minimal makeup, and a calm confidence that hit me like a wave. We had dinner, talked for hours. No kiss at the end, just a hug and a soft smile. She said she had to walk the rest of the way home alone. That struck me as odd, but I didn't question it. The next night we went out again. This time, her sister drove us. A fancier restaurant. She introduced me like someone important. I felt seen. A few days later, I left for business. While I was gone, we texted constantly. I asked her if she wanted to keep seeing me. She said yes, absolutely. When I returned to Bangkok, I met her family, her mother and sister. It felt too soon, too serious, but I went with it. We flew to Phuket together. Her hotel pick was perfect. It was late. We were tired, but the energy between us was electric. Still, we slept in separate beds. I was disappointed, but I didn't push. We had fun, laughed, took photos, shared drinks on the beach. On the last night, she stayed in my bed. Things heated up, but we stopped short of anything serious. It felt like progress, like something real was beginning. If this story is hitting close to home, take a second. Hit the like button and subscribe so you don't lose us in the feed. We've got more true stories from the shadows of paradise coming your way. Before we flew back, we stopped by Patong Beach. I wanted to buy her something small to thank her for the trip. Nothing extravagant, just a little keepsake. We ended up at a jewelry shop. She found a ring she loved, an engagement ring, priced at 100,000 baht. I told her it was too early for something like that, but she took me to a cafe nearby and told me she knew she loved me, that she'd been alone too long. I gave in, negotiated the price down to 85,000 baht, and bought the ring. She was glowing. We celebrated at a nice restaurant that evening, and for the first time I started to imagine a future. The next morning, I left Thailand, promising to return in 5 weeks. We spoke every day. She opened up more about her work, her sister, her dreams. She asked for help editing her English pages for clients. I agreed. She said she and her sister managed online promotions for travelers and freelancers. It sounded like a gray area business, somewhere between tourism and companionship. But I didn't dig. I trusted her. She was good to me. When she brought up marriage, it felt sudden, but not unwelcome. She mentioned sin, sod, the traditional dowry. I'd heard of it, but never imagined I'd be negotiating one. I researched the custom. It could range from modest to millions, depending on the woman's status. I figured 50,000 to 100,000 baht was normal, but she said her parents expected 3 million baht. I nearly laughed. That wasn't happening, but I also didn't want to lose her. We talked. I shared my finances, told her I was starting a business. We agreed to postpone the sin sod until the next year. That seemed fair. She wanted me to meet her family officially and suggested we take them on a trip to Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai. I bought 7 plane tickets. I didn't hesitate. I even bought small Christmas gifts, though they were Buddhist. I wanted them to like me. I wanted to belong. During the trip, though, they barely spoke to me. No English. Lynn tried translating at first, but quickly gave up. It felt awkward, forced. Back in Bangkok, we toured apartments. She found one near the airport simple, small, 6,000 baht a month. She said she didn't want me to visit her current place because her neighbors might gossip. I didn't press. I was trying to trust. Still, something began to feel off. Her spark faded. She looked tired, distant. I asked what was wrong. She said her family didn't trust me, that I hadn't proven myself. She said the only way to convince them was to pay a deposit on the dowry 300,000 baht. I knew it was stupid, but I agreed. She brightened instantly. We took a taxi back to my place that night. I spent the next few days gathering the money. I told myself this would fix things. It didn't. She pulled away again, citing work, stress, family. We barely saw each other. I felt like a stranger in my own life. I filled my time, helping with her work, rewriting profiles, fixing web pages, crafting messages. She barely said thank you. Eventually, I got restless. She said she was too busy to meet, so I walked through the city alone. That night, I met a few expats at a bar. We talked. I shared my story. They looked at me the way a father looks at a son who just wrecked his first car. "She's scamming you," one said bluntly. I didn't want to believe it. I defended her, said they didn't know her like I did. But doubt had already set in. Then came COVID. The world locked down. My businesses stalled. I told Lynn I had to return home for a while, regroup, manage things from afar. I asked her to spend more time together before I left. She hesitated, then agreed. I thought a vacation would help, so we booked 5 days on an island. It was a disaster. She was cold, irritable, barely spoke, didn't touch me, not even a kiss. She blamed stress. I tried to stay positive. We returned to Bangkok, and she spent one last night with me before I flew out. Back home, we stayed in touch. But most of our conversations were about her work and money. I started sending her 7,000 baht a week. It wasn't love anymore. It was a job, and I was the employee. One day she told me about a new client that couldn't match an American doctor. I asked why it was so hard. She gave vague answers. That was the last time we spoke. I messaged. I called. Nothing. 8 days later, she finally replied with a single message. "I never want to be with you." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just a cold wall slammed shut in my face. I asked her to return the ring, the dowry. She said by Thai law, she didn't have to, and that was that. When I mentioned a lawyer, she snapped. Said if I tried anything, she'd go to the police, claim I forced her into something. I saw the trap. I was twice her size, 10 years older. In a Thai courtroom, who would they believe? It wasn't worth the risk, so I let go. I walked away with nothing. After I let it go, I started digging. Using what she'd told me, I found her profile on a dating site, created just days after I sent the dowry deposit. The bio read, "Looking for real love, no fake men." The irony stung like salt in a wound. Her sister had a profile too. Already engaged to an Australian guy, who probably had no clue what she was really doing. It wasn't just a one-off. It was a system. They had a setup. Meet men online. Reel them in. Promise love. Collect rings, dowries, vacations, then vanish. I tracked down 2 other men Europeans like me. Both said the same thing. Love, promises, then silence. One had sent even more money than I had. One nearly lost his house. All of us believed we were special. None of us were. She once told me her dream was to own a house and live in peace. I guess she found a way to fund it one hopeless man at a time. I don't even blame her fully. I was an easy target. Lonely, romantic, hopeful. The warning signs were all there. I just didn't want to see them. And when I did, I ignored them. Because the fantasy felt better than the truth. Thailand is still beautiful. I won't pretend otherwise. But after this, I don't know when or if I'll go back. Not because I hate the country, but because I don't trust myself there anymore. I let my heart lead me into something I should have seen coming. And now I've paid the price. To anyone out there thinking about dating abroad, ask the hard questions. Do your research. Don't hand over money for promises. And never ever put anything under someone else's name. If I could go back, I'd choose differently. Maybe I'd just meet a girl in a bar. At least then, I'd know the rules of the game. Thanks for listening, friends. If this story hit home, if you've been through something like this, or want to avoid it, share your thoughts in the comments. We read them all. And if you found this story worth your time, consider hitting like and subscribing to the channel. It helps us share more real stories from the hidden corners of Southeast Asia. Take care out there. Not every dream is safe to chase. Some look like love and steal everything.